I'd like to call the July 10th, 2024 Town Board meeting to order. Ms. Marco, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Dodson?
Present.
Mr. Mastriani?
Present.
Mrs. Galucci?
Present.
Mr. Schwab? And Mrs. Collins?
Present.
5 present.
Okay, a quorum is present. Please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. Ms. Marco, would you lead us?
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have a very busy evening tonight, but there are a couple things that I'd like to say first. I've read some Facebook posts, comments about whether or not we can change the code for the business overlay area. And people are correct. At any time, any code can be changed. Members of this board or another administration might choose to change it. They've come in, repeal the old code and put in the new. I just want to state for the record, I am not in favor of changing the height restrictions, okay? At the last meeting, at the July 2nd meeting, I had a very nice conversation with Reverend Longmire, and my intention was to see what were the financial needs to keep the community center open and see what other avenues for revenue, like an endowment, could be found. And lastly, I think that it should be noted that we do have 3 senior housing units in Rotterdam, the Edison Apartments, Holly Manor, and Father Leo O'Brien. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, there are 149 apartments for seniors that are rent controlled, so to speak. At least seniors pay, what seniors pay is dependent upon their income. Also, every month I receive vouchers from HUD that help lower income families to pay for their utilities and rent. These vouchers are for rental houses and apartments. The vouchers that I sign are from various different apartment complexes, and they do help the financially disadvantaged families. So I just wanted to make sure that my intention with talking with Reverend Longmire was not misconstrued and you knew where I stood. Okay? With that, we'll start with our presentations. First off, I was wondering if I could have Vincent Liu, Nicholas Tedesco, and Jackie, I hope I say your name right, Lee, or Lai, come up front. Back in April, we have a cleanup every year at the Kiwanis Memorial Park, at the Kiwanis Park down in Rotterdam Junction. And these are 3 of the 4 students that help with the cleanup. They work all day long, they work very hard, and we just wanted to give them a citation and a certificate. So I'll read just one of the certificates. It's the Annual Canal Clean Sweep Volunteer Certificate of Recognition is presented to, actually it's going to be 4 students, for volunteering time and effort at the 2024 New York State Canal Corporation Annual Canal Clean Sweep event at the Kiwanis Boat Launch, Route 5S, Rotterdam Junction, on April 20th, 2024. Our sincerest appreciation for joining us to make the boat launch a welcome stopover along the Mohawk River. Our best wishes for your academic success. So thank you.
Yes,
Have one more presentation, but I don't see the resident here tonight. Andrea, are you here? Save that for the next one. All right. And we have a presentation for the bus patrol informational presentation, if someone wants to come up and give it.
I'm just going to do a short PowerPoint, if that's all right with the board.
So you're, yeah.
We are an automated stop arm enforcement company looking to change driver behavior on the school bus and make sure that the children of Rotterdam can get to and from school safely every day. And again, really appreciate everyone being here and letting us present to the community. Again, we are a student safety company. We use artificial intelligence and license plate reading camera technology with a goal to change that behavior, make sure every student in New York and honestly across the country has an affordable, cheap ride to school every single day that's safe. And we keep the drivers around those students in line with the state laws and following, the highest codes that are set not only in the state but in Rotterdam as well, hopefully. So a couple of our partners in the area, we're across the country with a high focus in New York. We're on about 16,000 buses in New York alone. In the area, partnering with Waterville, the city of Schenectady, Albany County, Albany City, and when you go downstate, many other counties, Long Island, Westchester, Rockland County, Orange County as well. And what we've seen throughout these programs, our longest partner in Suffolk County for 3 years now, we really see the number of times people passing the school bus drastically drop over time. Once members of the community understand that this law is being enforced and it's easily enforceable now, that they tend to change that behavior. You would think not many people blow past the school bus when the stop arm's out, but believe it or not, it happens 50,000 times a day just in New York State alone. There are other partners that we have camera technology on. And if you look at that footage here, you can see the problems that we're trying to deter. There was also a one-day survey done just 2 years ago that about 100,000 schools across the country participated in. They averaged just over 100,000 tickets in that, or just over 70,000, tickets in that one-day survey. If you equate that out over a 180-day operating year for a school district and all the school districts in the country, it's happening over 40 million times in the country on a school year basis. So what we see is people like this. We see distracted drivers. We see people getting to go where they need to go in a manner where they're disregarding the school bus. It's bright and yellow with flashing red lights, but sometimes that's not enough for motorists on the road. And again, the real goal of this program is to not, catch someone with a ticket and write a ticket in the mail. We want to make sure that everyone's afforded a safe ride to and from school every day, and that we keep motorists accountable. So these are some of the challenges we see in other parts of the state. This right here specifically is in Westchester County, this video footage. And we're also setting up programs now in Niskayuna, Waterville, Schenectady. And we see similar things across the state and the country, unfortunately. A little bit about how it works. When the school bus is out on the road every day, the cameras are turned on and they are picking up information on the cars driving past the bus. When those yellow lights turn on and the school bus is prepared to stop, our license plate reader starts recording and gathering technology or gathering information on people passing the school bus, and they give it a first review on our end whether we think it was a citation or not. There's also a second layer at Bus Patrol, a human reviewer that reviews that video evidence as well to see if this citation is true and would stand up in a court of law, because we're in the business of issuing real citations, and to that point, law enforcement always has the final say on what's a citation or not. We'll work with the chief of police here in Rotterdam, and his team will review all the citations coming in and be able to make changes if there's a certain area of the roadway where it's impractical to stop 4 lanes of traffic or something like that. We're very flexible and we work with the needs of a community. We want to make sure the end goal here is safety and not issuing tickets. So we handle all that work for the school district. We work with local law enforcement and the town to set that up. At that point, we mail the citations off. We have a call center to help set up payment plans, set up court dates if you're looking to contest a ticket. We'll help get you set up with your date in court. And if you need to delay your ticket on a payment plan, anything like that, we take care of. You'll always have someone on the phone if you'd like to just even discuss your ticket further. Every citation we send out, there's a video link on that ticket where you yourself can go watch the video, which I think goes a long way when you see yourself or you see a family member do it. Obviously, we want to make sure that they're only valid citations up. So it's full access. We're fully transparent on what videos and citations that we're sharing, not only the town, but the community and the people who may be passing the school bus. Quick little video here just to show you what our camera's picking up on the roadway. And again, these cameras are turned on while the bus is operational. They're not picking up, students' faces in the lot or anything like that. And all this information is overwritten once the citation has been issued and sent out. So we're not storing your information, your license plates, for long periods of time here. And this is our AI technology. We call our AVA, Automated Violation Analysis. And you can see her picking up every car in the scene, but obviously not every car is getting a ticket here. There's cars parked across the street, but she can identify a number of different instances at once where you have a multi-lane stop here. Not the best school bus stop in general, but it happens, right? Kids live in all different areas of this town, and in the community, and it's tough to have a perfect school bus stop at every route. So we're able to pick up multi-lanes of traffic and ensure that only the offender who's actually breaking the law is getting held accountable. And feel free to cut me off with any questions as I ramble through this. Another big piece of the program, my laptop's on a bit of a delay, I apologize. Here we go. Another big piece of the program is community awareness. We want the community to know what's coming down and what this program will entail before we just roll it out. If the town and the school district decide to move forward with the program, there would be a 30-day warning period where all citations are captured or just sent out with no monetary fine amount. We send you a video, we inform you on the law of what's happening, hoping to change that on the front end. We also work with the students themselves to give them better practice on how to cross, look both ways when you're crossing the street. We have a ton of material targeting kids from kindergarten up to high school, middle school age groups to make sure that all sides of the community are doing the right thing when they see a school bus. We also do a lot of social media and targeted networking ads around town before we roll this program out. Again, we can educate someone on the law through a ticket. If we can do it before that happens, before a child's even put at risk, that's always our goal too. So we try to take all fronts to educate your community here. Little look on the cameras that would be going on the bus. If we do move forward with the program, there's a number of external cameras that can capture different angles of that car approaching, passing, and fully leaving. So there's a full story told every time there's an incident occurred. There's also a number of internal cameras available for the school district at optional use. All that data captured on the internal cameras is owned and housed by the school district, not bus patrol. Our storage system is completely bifabricated, so we don't have access and standing video footage to the students' faces, what's going on inside the bus. But at the same time, the school district wouldn't have full access to what's going on outside the bus, so that evidence could hold up in a court of law if and when contested by a motorist. So the school district will be getting a nice little safety feature here too. Bullying, fight incidents on the bus, it's a great way to control what's happening inside the bus as well as outside. We'll also be providing a number of reporting back to the town that I'm sure could be shared with the community around where these events are occurring. We provide that information back to the school district too, so if there's one intersection where we're seeing a large majority of the events, if we can work with the school district to maybe hit that route 10 minutes later or 10 minutes before, change the routing to avoid a situation like that entirely, we want to make sure that the town and the school district has all that information to best plan themselves. You'll be able to see how long it's taking people to pay the citations, if people are getting contested, what the court process is looking like. So over time, we can tweak this to a point where it's fitting best for the Rotterdam community and its patrons. I promised I'd keep it quick. I appreciate everyone leaving the bench to come up here, but my favorite stat of the night is 98% of people who get a ticket through this program don't get another one. And I think it goes a long way to show that once people know the law is being enforced and that you can get held accountable for a violation like this, you pump your brakes when you see a school bus, almost like when you see a state trooper. You want to make sure you're doing the right thing and respecting that school bus while it's on the road. So that's a stat I'm very proud of, and I appreciate the time. I wanted to keep it brief. I know you have a long meeting tonight, but I'm happy to hang around in the hallway for 10-15 minutes. If anyone here has any questions around the program, I'd be happy to have a chat, address any questions or concerns. I'll be out there. Again, my name was Tom, and really appreciate you having us in here tonight.
Is there anybody in the audience that wishes to speak on any of the public hearings or on the privilege of the floor that has not signed up? Because if you don't sign up, you will not be able to speak. So has everybody who wishes to speak tonight signed up? So everybody signed up? Okay.
So of course they did say the public hearing they want to go.
We'll now open public hearing number 1. Clerk will read.
Okay, so there's just a few here. Yeah, I know. For receipt of comment on the proposed introductory local law blank of 2024 to amend Chapter 270 zoning of the town code to repeal the existing solar energy facilities law, local law 1 of the year 2017, and related site plan fees, Chapter 270-137.1A1, and for the adoption of an updated solar energy facilities law. I'm going to read one that I have that was emailed to me from Jean Brown. I did read the new code being voted on tonight. Upon reading the code, I was very impressed by the details. It protects adjacent landowners, private wells, setbacks, visual impact, glare, important wetlands, various animals, secure revenue for the town for any large projects cited, designed to prevent solar sprawl, and protects first responders with limited resources, decommissioning plan, and much more. Our rural living lifestyle should not be destroyed by solar energy power ever. Solar panels should not impact other human beings on an hourly or daily basis. I am definitely recommending all Rotterdam Town Board members to adopt the replacement code as written for solar energy facilities, which is in line with the Town Rotterdam Comprehensive Plan, preserving the rural character of Rotterdam Junction and Pattersonville, western portion of the town. Myself and all the other people in this area have enjoyed God's beauty in this country setting for many years. Come look at the views. Sincerely, Jean Brown. So people signed up, but they didn't say what public hearing they wanted to speak at. Dave, did you want to speak on public hearing 1?
On solar, yeah.
Okay, yep, then you're up. Sorry.
Hi, I'm Dave Bills. I live at 1390 Main Street, Rotterdam Junction. I also own a 70-plus acre farm. Between my family, we got another 50 acres. I work on the Energy Committee, and I've been a resident of Rotterdam for 70 years. That's how long I've lived here. I came to this building when it used to be the courthouse. I can't emphasize enough on home rule, because people in Schenectady don't know what goes on in Rotterdam whatsoever. We have a total different life in Rotterdam than they do in Schenectady, New York City. What happens in Rotterdam is very important. That's why we have this here, so that we make the rules, what goes on in our town, not somebody from New York City or anything else. So home rule is very important to me. I also feel that when this thing was written, my passion is that as a landowner, I should be able to do anything I want with my property. But my neighbor should also not suffer for it. And that's basically what I think this is written. And as far as though some things are too strict, if you feel that way or whatever, that's why we got variances. We use the variances all the time. Garage heights are 15 foot. I can't build a garage on the farm that won't shed snow. The 15 foot, you got to go get a variance. So everything that's written is changeable if you have a good enough reason. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Schaefer, are you for public hearing 1?
Yes.
Okay, you're up.
Thank you. My name is Jim Schaefer. I live on Skimmerhorn Road, and I'm here to strongly support the new solar facilities law. I think it's exactly what we need. It protects as a structured event. Small guys and big guys can use solar, and that's just appropriate. The small guy that wants to put something on their house or their business has some regulations. On the other hand, if you want to put a great big farm up of 20 acres or 150 acres or 300 acres, you ought to have more hoops to jump through. And that's exactly what this law does. It provides a structure for small up to big. Now, between you and me, Rotterdam Solar is never going to be big enough to solve our own problems. You could plate the entire village with solar and it still wouldn't be enough. So
To me, solar is kind of a little kind of fad right now. I'm a child of the nuclear age. I was born in the 40s. And to me, the solution is not just solar, and not just wind, and not just hydro, and not just coal, but nuclear. I would love to see nuclear power come to our world. There are all the safeguards that you could possibly imagine. The entire fleet of the US Navy is nuclear powered. The fleet of Russia is nuclear powered. The fleet of China is nuclear powered. How many accidents do you hear? None. It's highly regulated, and that's why it works. So regulations and nuclear is going to be our solution. In the meantime, we need to regulate solar. And we in Rotterdam value our rural landscape. In the comprehensive plan, we said Western Rotterdam is going to remain rural. And we mean it. And this particular law goes a long ways to protecting the values of vistas and farmlands and greenery. So I say nuclear, solar is okay, but I really think that this law goes a long ways toward solving our local problem. Thank you.
Kyle Quinn.
Good evening, Kyle Quinn, 807 Sanborn Road. I spoke at the last meeting on the same subject. I just wanted to say it again. I think I looked over the, through the code. I think it looks, from what everybody's saying, it looks like everybody put a lot of work into it. And every code is strict. I work in residential housing. I mean, how many people, thumb through, what, you step out of a house, what's 1 inch going to matter? Is someone going to die if your step's an inch higher, an inch lower than what the code says? There, like Mr. Bill said, there's variances for everything. I just think it coincides with the comprehensive plan great, and I basically just wanted to say it again. I think everybody put a lot of work into it, and I appreciate it. So, thank you.
Gina Rugula.
Hi, I'm Gina Regula from 278 Crawford Road. I wanted to thank the board for allowing us to speak and for listening to our concerns. Our concerns regarding the safety of our firefighters, residents, habitat, and our scenic views. I'm grateful for the Energy Advisory Committee. We're allowed to complete a very good comprehensive plan for our and neighboring towns. Now I stand before you tonight and ask you to pass it into law and keep Rotterdam a nice place to live.
Thank you.
Kim Scannelli.
Hi, I'm Kim Scannell, 257 Crawford Road. I wanted to thank the board for the opportunity to be on the Energy Advisory Committee. I love to tell the story. It was 2022. I was living a great life. I didn't even know they had town board meetings 2 times a week. And here I am. Here we all are. Working with the last administration and with this administration, I was truly able to see that our town, all of you, allow us to be a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. So thank you. Thank you for the honor of being on the Energy Advisory Committee. It was very concerning and disheartening to me to hear some of the comments that were made at the beginning of this meeting. The Energy Advisory Committee met in the public. We didn't meet with the public, but we met in the public. And we worked very hard to keep everybody in the loop. We were very lucky, we had 2 town board members that acted as liaisons. We also had a liaison from the Planning Commission that attended nearly every single Energy Advisory Committee meeting in addition to the Planning Commission meetings that he went to. Our chairperson sent the draft code out very regularly from the beginning when it was the first draft, which not very good. The second draft, oh, we're getting better. The third draft, okay, we're almost there. And each and every time she sent it out, she said, please provide your feedback to us. And so we also were able to take an opportunity to sit down with anyone of you that wanted to sit down with us and have a conversation about it. On February 22nd, we were proud and we were able to send a final draft. When we sent that out, we sent it to all of you, the town planner, the stormwater manager, the town engineer, the building inspector. And the very last sentence in that letter from February 22nd of this year was, we look forward to your feedback. I did hear from Jack the next day. He replied all, and he had some nice words, so thank you. Fred, the engineer, found me and asked me to share some of his feedback after he read the draft code with the Energy Advisory Committee, which I did. We passed that along. This code has been looked at in draft form for a very long time, and every single stakeholder has had ample opportunity. When it went in front of the Planning Commission, prior to that, DPW had an opportunity on June 6th to have it as part of their weekly agenda, where they get together and they talk about things that are going to happen at the next Planning Commission meeting. There was an opportunity for all stakeholders in DPW to have a voice for any concerns that they may have at that time. When the Planning Commission felt a little out of sorts because it was a lot of information to digest, we tabled the matter and we had a workshop with our town designated attorney, or town designated engineer, and with Courtney Heimel. It was available for anyone who wanted to come to it. It was kind of an informal roundtable type thing. And so the people that were in attendance were able to ask questions and get answers. So I feel very strongly that we really did give every single stakeholder an opportunity to have a voice in this. As I look around and I see so many of my neighbors, there are residents here that took the time to read this code and ask questions. And I think that any other stakeholder had the same opportunities. If they didn't take advantage of them, shame on them. Thank you.
That's it for public hearing. I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing.
Actually, can we have a discussion? It's public hearing.
Yep. Go ahead.
Ken, who's speaking on behalf of the Energy Committee? Patty? Okay. Just a few things. Just quick summary again, and just reviewing this so everyone has an appreciation. Again, this law is broken up into tiers, you know, again, I think it lends itself to small to large, as was indicated earlier. Starting out with a tier 1 roof mounted, tier 2 ground mounted, up to 1 megawatt, tier 3, which is not tier 1 or 2, up to 5 megawatts. And then we get into the interesting part of it again, which is tier 4, which is not a tier 1, 2, or 3, but again, that gets up to 25 megawatts. It gets into the Aura systems a little bit. And tier 5 is not tier 1, 2, 3, or 4. And you know, tier 5, greater than 25 megawatts is prohibited in all zoning districts in the town. Correct? Okay, so far so good. So I'm just going down through just a few things that I just wanted to bring to everyone's attention, and I think that really gets into the larger tier 4, just so I appreciate it. A tier 4 system, again, just so everyone's very clear on this, it's up to 25 megawatt. It's not allowed in any ag district in the town of Rotterdam, correct? Okay. It's only allowed in an I1 or an I2 zone unless it's an approved overlay district. You cannot have within 2.5 mile radius, in this case 5 mile diameter, any other Tier 4 greater, regardless of the municipality, if it were to go over multiple municipalities. And my only question on it again is, Princetown is a good example, is as lawmakers for the town of Rotterdam, how would we dictate if a solar would go into another municipality if it originated from that municipality, and they decided they were going to do solar on the other side of the street?
We couldn't dictate what another town does. We don't have control over their law. It would apply to a Rotterdam project.
Okay, so it'd have to come through us. Again, we're the lead agency, we're following it through, and if it happened to be large enough to cross a road or to go into another municipality, at that point in time, our law governs.
That's right.
Okay.
In the event that the project, the majority of the project was in the town of Rotterdam, so both, let's use the town of Rotterdam and the town of Princetown as
Yes.
examples. In the event a project spanned both of those municipalities, if the lion's share of the project was in the town of Princetown and it was a larger project, a project that would be going through the state, that larger project would have greater access to intervenor funds, and they would get it possibly 50-50, possibly in proportion, my understanding, possibly in proportion. Let's say if they had 65% of the project and then we had the remainder, they might get 65% of the intervenor funds. But a project that is that large, that's going to span both municipalities, that's going to go on to the state level, everybody can sign up, but the state's going to say what they want to say at the end of the day.
And I'm sorry, Mr. Dodson, I misunderstood your question. I thought you meant if there's a project in another municipality. I didn't realize you were asking one that spans two.
No, we're good. And then again, for our particular case, not above elevation 11,000, or 11, no, just 1,000, not 11,000. That'd be pretty high. Also includes very detailed water well testing. And then I see there's a lot of different constituents in there and stuff like that. Was that based on other laws that you guys looked at? Where did the list of the constituents come from?
Elevation came from multiple laws that had elevation stipulations, and the water well testing, where the rural area is, there's, I am sorry about that, where the rural area of the town is, there's a lot of private wells, and our Energy Advisory Committee was comprised of a lot of different folks with different expertise, and we had Mr. Bills on our team, who is an expert in well waters and excavation and runoff and all of that, and it was put in place by our committee to protect the surrounding areas, residents' private wells.
We also found out during the process, while we were still writing the draft, many of us that lived in the proximity of a proposed project in this municipality received well surveys from the developer. And many of the neighbors were confused as to what to do. The developers are seeking the input of our wells, and at our expense, we were going to have them tested. When the project is a larger project, it's a state requirement. So as a resident, I will speak as a resident, nothing to do with the Energy Advisory Committee. I know that to have the full-blown test of your water, it could be up to $750. I mean, you can check water pressure, but to do the full panel for all the contaminants, and frankly, as a resident, why should I have to pay $750 to have my well tested because somebody else wants to build a solar farm? It doesn't make sense.
So again, this testing is before, and is there testing after?
Right, the aim of the testing before is if the testing is done and there's no contaminants found, in a year, if agents, cadmium, which is a carcinogen, leaks into the ground and gets in the ground, then it'll test positive. So then we'll be able to pinpoint that the contamination came from the solar field. And Dave, you're going to say something. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, you gotta have a baseline.
Exactly.
And without the baseline, we'll be in the same situation when they put the Rotterdam dump in. None of the wells that were down in the lower part were ever tested. When the wells became polluted, there was no proof that it came from Rotterdam dump, and we battled town of Rotterdam for a long time.
And so the developers, in my opinion, are collecting that information for their own benefit so that they can have some kind of defense in the future if there is a problem, because they're relying on people not wanting to spend an extra $750 to have their well tested. And so if I don't provide that information to the developer, oh well. If my well runs dry, oh well. If I have contaminants, oh well. And also another thing that happened at the same time when we were drafting that part in particular, out in Schoharie County in Sharon Springs at the Salisbury Farm, two different farmers' wells stopped running. They went dry. And they were in very close proximity to drilling that was happening. Now, it could be a coincidence. It could be a lot of different things. But what if it's not? And should we be finding out in Rotterdam the hard way that it's not just a coincidence? So it's to protect the residents.
So I also see that you had a road use agreement in here, and again, protecting our roads. There's the opportunity for a pilot, payment in lieu of taxes in here, that was added after the fact, correct?
Yeah.
So
Okay.
we had worked, we had attempted to work last year with the assessor and the comptroller unsuccessfully. So when we drafted that part, in the original draft form, it said anything to do with finances obviously should not come from us. It should come from the assessor, who likely knows more about pilot programs than we do. There was something that had occurred. It's called Part N revenue. It was passed in the 2023 budget here in New York State, and it changed the methodology that was used for pilot programs. And it was very important, we felt very important, that be looked at by our assessor. So as far as any of that, that should have come, information was between Courtney and the TDE and the assessor.
Okay. And then we did come to some resolution on the benefit fee, 50/50, if you want to just explain how you arrived at that.
Yep. By suggestion and recommendation of some of the suggestions that we got, we adopted that.
So the thing I guess I want the public to understand again is this Tier 4 and all these, what I consider is very rigid conditions are for the larger 25, up to 25, I should say, because we don't get a Tier 5, for the larger project that would be administered through the state. Or it could be administered through us if they chose.
So this year in the budget, the Rapid Act, one of the things that it changed, in addition to moving the Office of Renewable Energy Siting from the Department of State to Public Service, it also now includes electronic transmissions. Maybe they're going to call themselves Oraset, I'm not really sure. But it also changed the eligibility for developers. Developers are no longer getting the choice between 20 and 25 megawatts. Maybe we'll go to the state, maybe we'll go to the town. It is now 25 megawatts or greater, you must go to the state.
Let's see. So we make a couple references in here, one to BES and the town's BES code, realizing we do not have that code at this point in time, but the regulation does reference it. This
I think
Level
that the reference is that we will have standalone BES code and that no BES can happen as part of a solar array right now.
So is that clear in here? Because, you know, again, I'm reading that, again, that's just referencing a BES code that doesn't exist. So again, say we were to approve this tonight, you know, obviously, you know, given the fact that we don't have a code, we're left a little bit hanging in that regard, correct?
Well, there's a moratorium right now on battery energy storage systems here in Rotterdam. And it's going to be the recommendation of the Energy Advisory Committee that stay in place until the governor's task force has been able to come back and we are able to implement per best practices as a community.
Right, so is that the same moratorium timeframe?
It's a different
September.
And we also do have very solid, a good start to battery energy storage system code. While we were writing the draft solar code, BESS did become a concern. We were asked at that point from the town board to pivot, and so we did. We directed our attention onto the battery energy storage system code. So we had a great start on it, but if we're going to end up having the actual laws that the state of New York puts into place for us, somewhat like California started doing last year, we stopped writing the BESS code and went back to working on solar. We actually doubled up our efforts on solar so that we did not have to extend the moratorium any farther, because we knew that moratoriums are a very serious thing. And we didn't want to delay it any longer, so we doubled up our efforts.
Okay. So you guys did recognize in here, and I think between the, say, the tier 3 and the tier 4, is again, if there's farms that would like to have solar and stuff, you know, up to the 5 megawatts, there's still some, you know, pretty stringent conditions that they have to follow in there, but they are able to move through, okay, without the more rigorous restrictions that you have under tier 4 that I just mentioned.
Absolutely. One of the great things, and all credit to Joe Mastriani for this, the Energy Advisory Committee was comprised of a very, very diverse group of people. We have people that live in the country, people that live where I like to call Rotterdam proper. We also have people that have rooftop solar, and we also have someone who had and is in the process of having his 5 megawatt solar array on his farm. So yeah, and we had first responders. We had people that are smart with money and taxes, like this person behind me. So we had this great group of people, but we had people who were looking at the code, like Dan Brudos is on the Energy Advisory Committee. He's building a 5 megawatt solar facility on his property. We toured it. He looked at it from that lens. That was so important. His voice was so important, so that a project like his could happen in other instances. And that's why we did change, after getting feedback, from having 3 tiers, 4 tiers. We had 4 tiers, and we changed it to 5 tiers to allow the projects, like the Brudos Farm project, to be able to thrive.
Where do we stand with the solar development application? So if we were to enact this tonight, is that ready to go? Has that been worked on?
We have given that responsibility to the person that knows this code probably as well, if not better than all of us, and that is the town designated engineer. The town board recently approved some funding so that he would be the right person to do that. He can use a model of what the other towns use, and he can already know all of our new laws, so he would be able to get that up and running.
Right, does he have a schedule to do that, you know, based if we were to approve this tonight?
I'm sure he could, because I know that he has the funding. Yes.
He knows it's his assignment, he's aware.
So really the last question for me is the elephant in the room question again, and it gets back to the rationale relative to the 2.5 mile radius. And if someone could, you know, you got to answer that question.
I'm going to answer that, and she's going to tell you some news that we just found out today, and Dave Bills can chime in too.
Okay.
So the intent behind that was to maintain the rural character of Rotterdam in accordance with the comprehensive plan. In the rural part of the town, when you're driving along at about 45 or 50 miles an hour, you get 2 miles goes pretty quick. And if you have a solar farm that's 100 acres, 100 acres can take up half of that whole trip. So the intent was to, stop the solar sprawl, just like, you all talk about the sprawl in town. It's to stop solar sprawl. In the western part of the town, there's already a 20 megawatt solar farm up and running in that area. In close proximity to that, there's a 90 megawatt already approved, already being made. And today I just found out that there's negotiations in the western part of our town is at the intersection of Montgomery Town, Florida, Princetown. It all happens in the same place. 3,000 acres in town of Florida. That's a lot of acres.
And if you keep driving west, the town of Glen, the town of Canterbury, and so energy sprawl, when people come to our town, and we want them to come to the western part of our town, we want people to drive out, and we want the businesses there, and our Kiwanis boat launch, we want people to enjoy it. People still go and take drives out in the country.
And part of what you may think is, well, you know, it's not your land, or it's not, you know, but this opportunity is something that's new, it's unprecedented, it's driven by the state to meet the energy goals. So it's not like an opportunity that people had all the time. It's not like.
And the other thing to take into consideration is how the town of Rotterdam and the town of Princetown lines intersect. We understand we can't control the town of Princetown. From Rhinex Corners Road to Crawford Road, on both sides of the road, is the town of Princetown. It's a wacky kind of a line that runs. So anybody that wants to can develop there. So from Crawford Road down Rhinex Corners to approximately Muselbeck, the right-hand side of the road is Rotterdam, the left-hand side of the road is Princetown. Over here is Princetown in Florida, and then when you go a little bit farther down, it's all Princetown again. So we're talking about a smaller area, and so as a town, we don't want that kind of saturation. We can control what we can control because we can't control other municipalities.
I said it was my last question, but I do have a note on here. Any concessions relative to, I read in there, we're getting into the safety aspects of trucks backing up and their backup alarms, and that we do other OSHA approved. Who really looked into the details of that? And are you really committed to the fact that, you know, we would legislate that type of change relative to dump trucks and stuff backing up, and there would be no backup alarms? And, you know, I did see your other OSHA, you know.
Those all came out of the Office of Renewable Energy Siting Regulations. So
Okay.
they were developed by a state agency, keeping exactly that type of thing in mind and protecting residents. And so, frankly, if it's good enough for the state, I would certainly say it's good enough for Rotterdam.
And much of our code was derived from the state regs.
As a basis. Okay, that's all for me.
Anyone else?
Yeah, so Molly, listen, I appreciate all the work everybody's done, and anyone knows me, I'm a home rule guy. I have solar on my house. I agree with Mr. Schaefer. I think it's all about nuclear and planting trees if you want to help the carbon footprint. I've traveled north up to Ogdensburg, Potsdam. The wind farms and the solar farms, it's absolutely disgusting to look at. So I agree about, well, you might not be clapping in a minute, but I do agree that these large projects need to be looked at for the integrity of our town, for the integrity of the open spaces. My only concern is we have a solar moratorium until October. And I'm getting people calling me and emailing me, and I have an email I'm looking at from somebody that I trust that works for the town. I'm not going to give a name, but it cites concerns that, you know, my primary concern is that the code needs to be clear and defensible if challenged in court. So that's a concern of mine. So this person has a concern, and I trust this person. And regardless of everyone had opportunities to look at this, I get it, but there are still people that I trust that aren't okay with some of this stuff. And I think there's some debate that needs to be had, and I think there's some change that need to be had. And I personally don't see the harm in keeping this public hearing open and looking at these things with these folks and having some more debate, because there are people who aren't comfortable with it, given the fact that we have a moratorium until October. So I think that we're protected from that standpoint, correct?
Yes. Yes.
So that's where I stand. I mean, I agree it needs to be done. I don't disagree. I just think that I don't think it needs to be rushed, and I don't think it needs to be reworked after we pass something. I don't see the point of passing it knowing we don't need to do it right tonight and then turn around and redo it because some of the people, you know, aren't happy with it and are concerned about some of the questions that they have about the code. That's where I'm at.
Anyone else? I have some reservations about it. A lot of time I didn't voice it because it was voiced by other people for me. One of the things that I have a problem with, and I had a problem with it from the very beginning when there was a sliding scale, that you could either pay $7,000 per acre or $3,500 or $2,500 per acre without a clear set of why is one developer paying X amount of dollars and why not another. It seems that that has kind of been done, but that the solution, well, I'm assuming, but and then there was the question of where would the money go? And it would be up, I believe, to the planning commission. But my problem with that is,
No,
don't have.
I'm sorry, I didn't interrupt, but that was up to the discretion of the board.
Oh, okay.
That's how it was
All right.
worded.
Sorry.
And that's the issue I had at the time.
Right,
is I didn't like the
now
change.
it got changed, that it's going to be 50% open space and 50% for parkland fees. Well, we already have 97 properties that 5 town employees have to take care of. So you're going to have open space. We have a 30-acre farm that we really just mow the very edges of it. And in the meantime, and I look at it as a liability from the town, anytime you have these open fields that the town owns, you can post it, you can even occasionally patrol it, but what happens when kids come in, or adults, with ATVs, motorbikes, or anything else?
Molly, I'm so sorry, you have completely misunderstood that. It's a fee. It's a $7,000 fee. 50%, the money goes to, it doesn't go to purchase open space. It simply goes to open space. You can do whatever you want with the money.
What are you going to do with open space?
Well, you just said.
I mean, what is open space other than I'm assuming you're going to purchase land?
It's like,
Yeah, to take care of it.
Take care of what?
The open space that you're having trouble mowing, it can be used for maintenance.
So not necessarily for parks, okay, but in this particular case, just so I understand this correctly too,
Yeah,
is
because I'm confused.
we talk about our recent acquisition for a park, the farm, you know, that hasn't been established as a park at this point in time, even though we bought it. Is that theoretically, I guess, considered open space, and is that what you're targeting as opposed to, you know, parkland fees? Or is it, as Molly
Yeah, I'm
indicates,
confused.
is there land available up there that, you know, rather than developing it, there would be an interest to maintain it, buy it from the town standpoint and maintain, you know, the open space and character of that area?
Right.
And I guess that's my point, there's still confusion,
Yeah, I don't understand where the
regardless
space-
of how many
open
times
space
people have looked at
is.
this.
Like if you're not.
I thought the money was to go, like, they got a program, Schenectady County, if you keep your farm green, promise not to develop it, they'll give you X amount of money. And, because I was offered money to keep my farm green, but I told them I don't know what land values will be in 20 years, so.
So that modification was made at the request of, we did exactly what we thought we were getting from the stakeholders, that the town board did not want anybody to have discretion. And so, and because it appeared perhaps improper to have the 2 different fees, so we made it a straight fee like the other towns, Wilton, Glenville, $7,000 an acre, and then 50% not to purchase property, whatever you do for conservation purposes and open space. You have a whole conservation committee, and 50% goes to parks. People that need money for parks, people that need money at the conservation committee. 50-50. I'm not sure what's unclear about it.
So I think maybe, again, you did clarify that now, because if it is, I look at it as we got beautiful trails, you know, we call it parks, okay? You know, there is a distinction, park money is gonna go to park money, but we often think of that as our pocket parks, memorial parks, et cetera, and there's a lot of maintenance associated with that, money needed. You know, the open space thing is, in my mind, you know, you defined it, you know, we put an account together, an escrow account, and the money goes in there, and we're a little bit more detailed that it's more for conservation and some of the other things that we're trying to do in our town, and maybe less with the, quote, open spaces, but that's the intent.
And it was 100% based on feedback that we received from the stakeholders that chose to provide feedback.
the comprehensive report says the western part of the county, town should be safe for rural space. That's how you gotta, you
And
know,
we have
use it.
space there that can be maintained. I mean, I don't go to conservation, I don't go to those meetings.
Right.
But they have needs for finances, so they can have money, 50% to that, 50% to the Parks Committee, because the Parks people said they need money too, instead of doing 100% parks.
And I have a problem with 2.5 miles between them. That's roughly from here down to Shelmont High School. I thought it was suggested that we reduce it to 1.5 miles. So like Jack said, 2.5 miles, you're talking about a 5-mile radius around wherever there's a solar array. And I look at it as how can we best defend it if it goes before a court? And I do believe that eventually it will. And to be perfectly honest with you, I'm with Mr. Schaefer. I don't think solar works here. If I lived in Arizona, if I lived in New Mexico, that's fine. I don't see why it should work here. But, you know, I understand your feelings, but yet, there was a Rotterdam Junction resident one time that spoke to me, and they own a farm, and he wanted to put in apartments. So, you know, you want to keep it rural, but if somebody wanted to build apartments out there, are you going to allow to change the zone for that? I mean, I have to look at it in a broad sense, not just, I get the feeling most people are against solar, and like I said, I can't say I'm a big proponent of it, but to me, I have to have a code that I feel gives the town the best chance of defending it. I mean, originally, you wanted 14-foot high shrubs to go around a solar display. I can't even imagine, are we talking $50,000 for a developer?
Is that down to 8 now?
No,
That went to
that's
8?
not true.
That's down to 8, and now it's down, but yet New York State is requiring 6 foot. Well, 6 foot is a high buffer, why not make it more in line with the state code? Why 8 foot?
Well, town of Rotterdam planted 12, a whole field of trees, 4 dusty boots to block the view from the dump at 12 foot high. So it's been done already.
And we listen to the stakeholders. And so if you look at a map of Rotterdam, especially in the western portion of the town, again, we don't control the land in Princetown, we don't control the land in Florida. So if you only strictly look at accessible land in Rotterdam, it doesn't really, it doesn't take a lot. I mean, it's easy to say if I drive from here to Shalmont. It's a mile if I drive from here to Patty's Road, from my house, my road to Patty's Road, you know, so. We're not gonna ever see in the town of Rotterdam, between here and Shalmont.
Well, that's just to give, that's my reference,
Right.
okay? If I lived out in Rotterdam Junction, I would say, well, it's from this road to this road. But that's my reference, would be basically from this building all the way to Shelmont.
But you could never, there's houses all on the, there's no open space here, so I understand why it seems like a far ways, but it really,
Well, a mile is a
country
mile, no
block.
matter where it is.
Yeah,
Okay, I'm sorry.
I have almost a mile river frontage.
Right.
I mean, come on, a mile's nothing out in Junction, Pattersonville.
The important thing to consider is just the purpose of this code in the Tier 4 sections and Tier 3 is to preserve the rural character of the beautiful part of the western part of our town. Variances can be had. If there is a location that it fits 8 out of 10 things, but it's 2.4 miles or 1.9 miles, there can be a variance to be had that, at the discretion of the planning commission, can be given so that, you know, a project that fits within the spirit of maintaining our comprehensive plan, maintaining the rural character of the western part of town, it can go forward. There's a ton of incentives at the state level and at the federal level to bring solar all over upstate New York. And what we're trying to do is kind of counterbalance that to make it a more level equation. But the amount of money that's being given to the developers and property owners to put solar in, that they should be able to meet the restrictions that we feel are fair.
And Molly, I just want to point out that we have been in lockstep with legal counsel throughout the entire process. Our legal counsel has reviewed everything, has met with constantly at our meetings. I feel, this committee has been outstanding and has included everybody. They met with the planning team when they said, this is a large document, can you help us understand this a little bit better? They spent numerous hours with several people on that planning committee and other stakeholders, and they answered every single question, and they adjusted anything that was appropriate to adjust, which was an awful lot. There was a lot of give and take. Every single board member was afforded the opportunity to meet with the Energy Committee. I know they personally reached out to everyone. If we didn't ask these questions prior, shame on us, because we've been living and breathing this, and the only residents have the opportunity to ask this.
Last one for me.
An engineer also at the Planning Commission workshop, in addition to having legal counsel there, when the question of how it being restrictive came up, our town designated engineer told us all that it might seem restrictive when you look at it, but compared to a lot of other codes in New York State, especially the ones downstate, this isn't restrictive at all. He went on to say, more and more towns are changing their codes to become more restrictive because they have been harmed and the residents have been harmed by predatory developers in the past.
Okay, in the same vein, can you just address again for the public again is our thought on the fact that you got property owners and this law will restrict their ability to sell their property to a developer to do solar, and I think in some regards that is the intent here, but if you could think about the other side, what was the thought of the committee relative to restricting property owners' rights to, they own it, they paid the taxes on it, and then now we as a government body are restricting their use of their own property, okay, so that they can no longer sell it.
What about the value of my property?
That's for them to answer.
That you have to take into consideration the values of other people's property. When these come in, it is a known fact that the property values of others in the surrounding areas that did not sign on are losing money on their property.
So was that the rationale, the basic rationale?
And the other rationale was
comprehensive plan.
the comprehensive plan, but the other rationale was every project that has been proposed in this town, if it went through the state, it would happen. It could still happen. There's the setbacks and everything else could still allow it. So people can still use their land. We restrict everybody all the time. Constantly, we tell people how high their garage can be. We're gonna talk later on about what you can have in your yard that's considered junk and what's a trailer. Well, one man's junk is another man's treasure. So we have so many rules. This is no different. It's just new. It's new to many of us.
I was not in favor of allowing pot stores in Rotterdam. Call me old-fashioned, that's fine. I spoke to the then attorney and I said, I want it where nobody can ever get it. I mean, put it in the middle where it has to be surrounded by a pink house on one side and a blue house on the other. Make it as restrictive as you possibly can, because I really don't want it in the town of Rotterdam. And it was a previous attorney, and he said, I can do that. He said, I'll do it for you, write it up, absolutely no problem. He goes, but the first person that challenges it, you're gonna lose. And I still believe that this is way too restrictive to ever go past scrutiny. But again, it's gonna be a board decision, majority rules, and I'm fine with
The
it.
town attorney sat at that workshop as well and said every single thing in there was legal and defensible.
And furthermore, you know, it's important we all understand, we took an oath to protect and uphold the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the State of New York, which gives local municipalities the authority over the zoning in our borders. It's the home rule provision of the New York State Constitution. And as intimidating as the state can be, saying that, well, you know, big projects over 25 megawatts have to go to the state, it's unconstitutional. And at some point that will be overturned.
Any other discussion?
Molly, I just got one quick thing. I know, you've talked about just whether the law is defensible or not. I just want to reiterate, from the town attorney perspective, I would say that yes, this law would be defensible in court. We even have a severability clause in here talking about, hey, if there are portions of this law that are found unenforceable, it doesn't strike the entire law down. If, say, the court found that, OSHA trumps this law and says that we have to have the backup alarms. Okay, the rest of the law still stands here, okay? So that's something to take into consideration as well for the board.
Thank you. I think that was an
Entertain a
important.
motion?
I would like to make a motion to close this public hearing.
I'll second that.
Okay, there was a motion by Mrs. Galucci and seconded by Mr. Mastriani. Clerk will call the roll.
To close the public hearing, Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlag?
No.
Mrs. Collins?
No.
2 no, 3 yes, and it passes.
Now go on to public hearing number 2. The clerk will read.
To accept the map, plan, and report for the proposed sewer district number 2, extension number 17, Helderberg Meadows West. The sewer district is being formed to add an additional 5.09 acres to the existing Helderberg Meadows Sewer District number 2, extension number 12, approved in 2008. This request is to facilitate the installation of sanitary sewers to service 124 condominium units that were approved by the Rotterdam Planning Commission on July 19, 2022.
Is there anyone who wishes to speak on it?
So I know Brett's here. If you'd like to make a quick presentation, he's more than welcome.
Good evening. My name is Brett Steenberg. I'm the engineer for the applicant. I'll make this very brief. I know you've had a long agenda this evening. This is the same plot of land that we reviewed. It's almost 2 years now, I think, two years. We had a public hearing on it. The only change to the map plan report, significant change to the map plan report, didn't change the area. It was, we had done a downstream analysis and we had noted a pipe right here in Sunrise Boulevard that actually was retaining water in the manhole. It was backing up into the manhole. And in our due diligence to get started with the construction on the condominium phase, the contractor met us out there with town officials. We got down in the manhole, initially it's a pretty deep manhole. What we found was that the pipe itself was fine. We did not need to get in and replace the pipe. The pipe was just clogged with a very large grease clog at the inlet. It was cleared, allowed the water to flow through. The town sewer department was like, oh, this is great, better than ripping up Sunrise Boulevard. There were a lot of utilities in the way. So we made an amendment to the report, submitted it to DEC. DEC's response was, we've already submitted our comments and our approval of this district extension. So it's essentially the 5.09 acres, which was formerly the Giannetti parcel that was adopted into the Helderberg Meadows, this phase of Helderberg Meadows, which, as some of you may be aware, was changed from single-family homes to 124 condominiums and is under construction currently.
So we'll just, if there's any comments from the public? If not,
Nobody signed up.
No one signed up? Okay. I'll make a motion to close.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mrs. Galucci. Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlag?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes to close.
Motion
I
passes.
noticed this wasn't on the agenda for any approval this evening, so we're all set for this evening, correct?
Yeah, you're good.
All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. Public hearing number 3, the clerk will read.
To consider proposed local law establishing a demonstration program imposing owner liability for failure of an operator to stop for a school bus displaying a red visual signal and stop arm.
Did anyone sign up to speak?
They did not.
Okay. We all heard the presentation earlier. Is there anybody on the board that wishes to speak to it?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that Mr. Tokar is still here. If we have any questions from the board, if you guys want to have any discussion with him or anybody from the audience, he's welcome. He's going to stay and catch people afterwards in the hallway if need be. But, I think this is a great program. As you can tell from the presentation, I think it's needed. It's of no cost to the town. It's of no cost to the school districts. And they'll be working with Rotterdam PD to make sure that these people are appropriately cited. And it's about the safety of the kids. We've seen way too many issues where people blow past these buses. So I don't know if anybody on the board has any questions for Mr. Tokar while he's still here.
Anyone? Okay, then I'll entertain the motion.
Just to close the public hearing,
Okay.
I'll make the motion.
Motion to close the public hearing was made by Mr. Dotson. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Schlag. Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlag?
Yes.
Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes to close.
Motion passes. Okay.
Molly, before we go on, are we going to take time to discuss or to allow the assessor to present, or do you want to wait till we get to the resolution?
It's up to you. Go for it.
Mind just giving a brief overview of the,
Do you want to do that now or by the resolution?
well, that's his call. I mean, you could stay, it's on a resolution, might have a couple questions.
Whatever you guys need.
We'll wait.
Okay, we'll now move on to privilege of the floor. Ms. Marcos, anybody who wishes to speak.
Mark Gronick?
I remind everybody that you have 4 minutes, and I'll raise my hand at 3.5 minutes. You can wind up with it.
Okay. I timed this out, and it's a little bit over 4 minutes, a few seconds over. It doesn't even go to 5 minutes, and that's if I speak fast and don't stumble too much. So I appreciate the courtesy. Thank you. Okay, I hope that doesn't come off my tongue.
Mark, just state your name and your address.
Yes, it's all on here.
But just say it.
Yes.
We're ready.
Madam Supervisor and council members, my name is Mark Gronich, and I live at 15 Boylston Drive in Delmar, Albany County. I attend services on occasion at Congregation Beth Israel. Tonight I wish to speak to you about the cemetery desecration that occurred in April. The vandalism took place across 6 cemeteries. 3 are in regular use and 3 are dormant cemeteries. The 6 cemeteries are located at the corner of Skirmorn Street and Stewart Road. I know during public comment or privilege of the floor there is no question made superior. This is supposed to be a monologue. I have one simple silent request. With a show of hands, how many of you knew about this before tonight and took the time to see for yourself the damage done to the headstones? Okay. Thank you for checking it out. And for those of you who have not gone to see the horrific damage on sacred ground, please take the time to do so. The problem I have with the investigation is that is or is not taking place by the Rotterdam Police Department. I met with a sergeant last month who called synagogues churches on 2 separate occasions during our conversation. This needs to be a teachable moment here. I also met with the officer over the phone and in person who was handling this case. He told me the incidents are being handled as a criminal mischief case, which is a felony hate crime. There is a bill in the Senate and the Assembly that could pass next year, specifically adding cemetery desecration to the hate crimes bill, so there could be stronger penalties attached to these types of instances. The U.S. Senator Kirsten Gillibrand called the vandalism disgusting. The governor called this a hate crime, as did your local area assembly members, Angela Santabarbara and Phil Steck, and Senator Jim Tedisco. Senator Neil Breslin is retiring this year, and Assemblywoman Pat Fahey is likely to be your new state senator, so she will get more involved if this is not resolved by the end of this year. All the rabbis and significant synagogue leaders in Schenectady and Clifton Park also believe this is a hate crime. So why aren't the town law enforcement and town leaders such as yourselves doing more to catch the vandals? Why isn't the case being turned over to the State Police Hate Crimes Unit in conjunction with the Rotterdam Police? All I was told is that the state police know about this. In the Cincinnati case, which you have a copy of that article, President Biden commented on the July 3rd toppling of Jewish headstones. President Biden called the incident despicable. This is anti-Semitism and it is vile. I condemn these acts and commit my administration to support investigators in holding those responsible accountable to the full extent of the law. Do we really need the President's administration to step in on this case? The FBI stepped in with the Cincinnati case and offered a $10,000 reward for information leading to the arrest of those responsible. We have an FBI office in Albany. Why are we not asking them to look into this case? I want to emphasize I don't want to take anything away from the Rotterdam police, but the state police and the FBI have more resources to handle a case like this. A couple of weeks ago, I was sitting in my car near the cemeteries and noticed a young man sitting at the garden area to the Abigail entrance to the cemetery. I drove up and said to the young man, "You should be careful here because there has been some vandalism." He said, "I know who did it. The Sheevy family around the corner did the damage." I called the Rotterdam police and 10 minutes later a patrol car responded. The teenager was gone by then. He went to his friend's house to get a basketball to shoot hoops nearby. I told the officer who responded, but to no avail. He said would drive around and see if he could find him. I saw the young man again leaving the cemetery with his friend. I took a picture and sent it to the police. The officer said the man did not look familiar to anyone at the police station. He also said he went to the Shiva house in April. The police went to the Shiva house in April when the incident became known to the community. As it was told to me by the officer in April or May, the Shivas were questioned whether they had anything to do with this. They said no and then moved on, nothing more. The best to my knowledge, the police officer did not go back to the house to ask them again. This young man could have been lying, had a vendetta out for the family, or just said the first thing that came to his mind, "I'm not naive, I want you to know that." The police, to my knowledge, did not go back to the house for additional questioning. Why aren't the Rotterdam police putting a car at the cemetery for the safety of the visitors who wish to pay their respects to their loved ones?
I'm sorry.
How come the Rotterdam police are not taking a more vigorous approach and patrolling the area with additional patrol cars? Are they understaffed for this mission? This is one example of what I mean by not having enough resources. I would like for you to see the damage for yourselves. I want you to get as fired up as I am about this desecration that occurred, and through your ideas, help catch the culprits. As I said in the beginning of my remarks, I don't want to take anything away from the Rotterdam PD, but more needs to be done by law enforcement. I hope you can help move this along. Thank you for listening and taking the time to visit the vandalism at the Jewish cemeteries.
I thank you for your comments. That was quite been over the 4 minutes, but I do take what you're saying very seriously, and I will afford other people a little time after the 4 minutes to be equal. Okay?
Chris DeTessa.
Hi, good evening. Christy Tesso, 2416 McCurry Road. I know we've been here, so I don't envy any of you. I know how tough your job is. Hearing the solar situation tonight is confusing, it's tough. There are no-brainers. The AI for the bus, for the schools, for the kids, it's a no-brainer. Doesn't cost the taxpayer a thing. Doesn't cost the school district a thing. Doesn't cost the town a thing. You know what else is a no-brainer? Kids going to bed with meals in their stomach. Supervisor Collins, you talked about your grandchildren being safe. at their school bus drop-off and pickups. We served 107 children last month. We'd like to do more. There's greater need out there. Also, I want to state too, Pastor Dustin wanted to be here. He's in the ER with kidney stones. I think he emailed all of you. So, we don't want to be adversarial. We're just trying to figure out a path forward here. Questions have been asked. Why does limiting our building height hurt us going forward? And I'll explain that to you. I don't know if you all are aware of that. Our developer is going to purchase the property from us. Was going to give us $50,000 this fall, every single year up until it's developed, till we buy it from us, full-time until it's gone. Our property was valued at $3.5 million. Restricting its height devalues our property. We can't build. They don't want to build, they won't build enough, there's not enough resources in it for them. That's why this hurts us. That's why this hurts us. We operate right now in volunteer hours. I am the administrative coordinator for the food pantry, so I'm in charge of it. I can tell you, you ask why that hurts us. Our ending balance right now, after June, is $2,317. That's what we have to work off for next month. We've served 3,123 meals in June. We expect that need to grow in July. $2,317 is what I have to help people, to make sure that all children go to bed not hungry. I think that's just as important as kids not getting hit when they're going to their bus stop. Supervisor Collins, my question to you is, you keep saying that regulating that building height is what's best for Rotterdam. Explain to us how. How does that better serve Rotterdam? Keeping the building height at 2 stories. How does that better serve Rotterdam? When we are talking about a program and an organization and a center that is willing to do your job for you, we understand that your hands are tied, but we're willing to do it at no cost to the taxpayer or to the town. So I would just like to know, how does that better serve Rotterdam residents than making sure that we have a viable path forward? You don't have to answer me now. That's fine. Perhaps in the future you'll have to answer all your constituents. Thank you for your time.
Kim Hughes.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's okay, I'm used to it. Hi, I'm Kimberly Marquise. I am the board chair for the Rotterdam Community Center. You saw me here before, so I'm back again.
Just give your address.
Oh, sorry. I live on Lakeview Avenue. I want to reiterate what Chris just said. You heard some pretty scary numbers. We have been in operation for 2 years, as of this past June. We have helped so many families in this town that are suffering. I mean, we have people coming in there that they can't figure out how to buy their medication, how to feed their kids, how to pay their bills, how to keep their houses heated in the summer, in the winter time. And we have like a couple $1,000s to work with. The project that we are proposing is desperately needed. You all see it on TV. Affordable housing is an issue everywhere, in every single town, in every locality. People are paying $1,400 a month for a dinky little 2-bedroom apartment, and they can barely feed their kids. This is what we're talking about. We're not talking about bringing in gangs or vandals or anything crazy like that that you wouldn't want in your town, and I can certainly understand that. We're talking about hardworking families. They have jobs, sometimes 2 jobs. And even with those 2 jobs, they can't afford the things that they have to afford to provide a safe place to live, put food on the table, buy their medicine, pay all their bills. You all might not be able to relate to that. Maybe you were like that at one time when you were younger, in your 20s. We all struggled then. But that's the reality of what's going on here. We just are asking you to please work with us. We don't want to be combative. We don't want to be a pain in your butt. Clearly, you got a lot going on here already to deal with. We don't want to be any more of a problem. We just want you to work with us to make this happen so that we can provide more for this community. Because we've been doing it for 2 years on our own with no help from anybody. And we're asking you to help us, to let us be able to build a place safe, affordable, people to live. And we're not asking you for any money. We're not asking you to pick up a hammer or paint a wall. We just want you to work with us. That's all. So please reconsider. Please be willing to sit down and talk to us. There's plenty of other options we could consider. I think we can all work together for the better of the people that you guys represent. Thank you for your time.
Karen Unser.
I'm in agreement that the Rotterdam Community Center does a lot to improve the community. It's not just the food pantry, which I volunteer and help out with. It's also a place where people recreate. It's a place where people meet. There's a lot that goes on there besides just. And as far as the housing, it was my understanding that it's not just for seniors. This has always been a working class community. Basically a bedroom town for GE back in the day. And where are people supposed to work, live, where maybe they work at Taco Bell, McDonald's, grocery store? Rent is expensive. And I just don't know how people get along or make it. And that's about all I would need to say.
Thank you. Thank you. Penny and City.
Penny and City, 1133 Fort Hunter Road. The mission of Messiah Church, which I belong to, is to help build a community where all have resources to help with the needs that they have. Rotterdam Community Center is a vital part of our mission statement. It's my religious conviction that those who have more should help those less fortunate. I was raised by a single mother of 9 children. If we had not had help, my mother never would have been able to provide for us. I strongly feel it's everybody's responsibility to help those around us that are struggling. The community center runs a Mohan Cares program now that Sycamore, they used to be Sycam, started because they feel that the Mohanson School District has many families who need food and resources provided to them. I want the Rotterdam Town Board to help Messiah make our town a nice place to live where people less fortunate can receive the help they need. There are a few senior housings, Molly referenced those, in Rotterdam, but they're not that I know of, is there any affordable housing for families. So we need to help those families that are barely making ends meet. And I hope that you will support some work that we can do at the community center. Thank you.
Thank you. Brenda Trojan.
This is sort of what I said.
Thank you.
TV station for that time.
Oh, no, I left it up there on purpose, miss, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Thanks anyway, though.
I would like to redress comments directed at me by Mastriani at the last town board meeting regarding the issues surrounding Rotterdam's community center and the zoning change that has put the community center in peril. This, according to public information and comments from dozens of concerned citizens, volunteers, and faith leaders. Specifically, Mastriani accused me of embellishing the issue. I reject this ridiculous claim. Let me explain with the 4 minutes that I have. The first two paragraphs of a June 11th Gazette article titled "Zoning Change Threatens Community Center" reads like this. It started with an idea to provide services to those in need. It may end up with a zoning change. Officials behind the Rotterdam Community Center are raising concerns about the recently approved zoning change that they say will lead to the closure of the facility that provides thousands of free meals to hundreds of residents each month, along with health, wellness, and educational programming. The article continues to report that Reverend Longmire of the Messiah Lutheran Church, who opened the Rotterdam Community Center, said long-term plans called for selling the property to a private developer who planned to construct a 3-story mixed-use building that would include affordable housing on the upper 2 floors and a new state-of-the-art community center on the ground floor that the church could then afford to continue to operate and grow earnest. This would allow the church to continue to provide vital services to the elderly and to the community at large, at no expense to Rotterdam taxpayers. But this board chose to torpedo those plans by abruptly and purposely changing the zoning that now prohibits 3-story buildings. It's not an embellishment, Mastriani. Those are the facts. It was also reported in this article that Collins and Dobson were fully aware of the church's plans, but went ahead with zoning change, effectively killing the project, and in all likelihood will shut down the community center. Is this old school mentality? Is this old school mentality? Must be. In conclusion, I believe this board purposely torpedoed the future viability of Rotterdam's community center by abruptly changing the zoning, making the overall development of this property impossible, all in collusion with the Planning Commission. If you read Sunday's op-ed article by Penny and City, who is a member of the Rotterdam Community Center Advisory Board, it appears that this board, you guys, double-crossed the Messiah Lutheran Church. Very Christian of you guys. The Rotterdam's Community Center provides food for 350 families each month, services another 150 households at its weekly produce pantry, and in June served a total of 3,069 meals. Talk about the public good. Lastly, she, member of the Planning Commission, who stated that these sort of places belong in Schenectady, needs to explain to the public what she meant by that statement. Public deserves transparency. Mastriani, do you now understand why I am concerned?
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it.
That's it. Okay. Oh. And we're closing privilege of the floor. Move on to resolutions. Our first resolution is Resolution 270 of the year 2024. The clerk will read.
Accepting town board meeting minutes.
Okay, is there any discussion? Do I have a motion? I'll make the motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Second by Mrs. Galucci. On the question. Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Abstain.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlad?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
4 yes and 1 abstain.
Resolution passes. Resolution number 271 of the year 2024. The clerk will read.
To accept revenue for the town clerk's office for June of 2024.
Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Second by Mrs. Galucci. On the question, Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlag?
Yes.
Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 272 of the year 2024, the clerk will read.
To authorize a release of retainage to AMZ Construction Services.
Okay, is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Mastriani. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlag?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution number 273 of the year 2024, the clerk will read.
To declare lead agency for seeker review on a change of zone request on a plus or minus 14.02 acres from agricultural A1 to general business B2 located at 774 and 778 Dwaynesburg Road.
Okay, is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Second by Mrs. Galucci. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlag?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 274 of the year 2024, the clerk will read.
To call for a public hearing on the proposed introductory local law blank of 2024 to amend Chapter 270 zoning of the town code relating to a change of zone from agricultural A1 to general business B2 located at 774 and 778 Dwaynesburg Road.
Okay, is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Second by Mrs. Galucci. Clerk will call, on the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlag?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 275 of the year 2024, the clerk will read.
To declare lead agency for seeker review on a change of zone from general business B2 to multifamily residential R3 located at 1725 Tower Street.
Okay, is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll move.
Motion by Mr. Mastriani. Do I have a second? I'll second. I'm sorry, I lost my place. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
No.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
No.
Mr. Schlag?
Yes.
Mrs. Collins?
Yes,
3 yes, 2 no.
motion passes. Resolution 276 of the year 2024, the clerk will read.
To call for a public hearing on the proposed introductory local law of 2024 to amend Chapter 270 zoning of the town code relating to a change of zone from general business B2 to multifamily residential R3 located at 1725 Tower Street.
Okay, is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Mastriani. Do I have a second? I'll second again. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
No.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
No.
Mr. Schlag?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
3 yes, 2 no.
Resolution passes. Resolution 277 of the year 2024, the clerk will read.
To recognize the introduction of introductory local law blank of 2024 to amend Chapter 264, Section 9, entitled Vehicles and Junk, outside storage of penalties for offenses of the Code of the Town of Rotterdam and scheduling a public hearing thereon.
Okay, is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Schlag. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlag?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 278 of the year 2024, the clerk will read.
To recognize the introduction of introductory local law blank of 2024 to amend Chapter 265, Section 16, entitled Property Maintenance Penalties for Offenses of the Code of the Town of Rotterdam and scheduling a public hearing thereon.
Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
I heard Mr. Mastriani first. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlag?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 279 of the year 2024, the clerk will read.
To negotiate and execute an agreement with Axon Enterprise, Inc.
Okay, is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Schlag. On the question, Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlad?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 280 of the year 2024, the clerk will read.
To declare equipment obsolete.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
Make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Mastriani. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Dodson. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlad?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 281 of the year 2024, the clerk will read.
To enact introductory local law number 12 of 2024 to adopt chapter 266B entitled School Bus Stop Arm Camera Program.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
Actually, I'd like some discussion before we go to that. Chief Brown, you're here, correct?
Yes.
And you've been involved with this, the meetings that we've had, and, would you like to say anything regarding, because you obviously have a role in this, and would you like to say anything about your role?
Sure, yes. I've met with Bus Patrol from the very beginning. We also met with both school districts at that initial meeting. It was very positively received. I think I fully support this. It allows us to, make a priority for the safety of our children in the town, and it allows us to more easily enforce these violations as they are very difficult to enforce. So I fully support this.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any other discussion? Do I have a motion?
Make a motion?
Motion by Mr. Schlad. Do I have a
I
second?
have a second.
Second by Mr. Dodson. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlad?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 282 of the year 2024, the clerk will read.
To adopt a seeker negative declaration to amend Chapter 270 zoning of the Town Code to repeal the existing solar energy facilities law, local number 1 of the year 2017, and related site plan fees, Chapter 270-137.1A1, and for the adoption of an updated solar energies facility law.
Okay, is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mrs. Galucci. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Mastriani. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlad?
No.
And Mrs. Collins?
No.
2 no and 3 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution number 283 of the year 2024, the clerk will read.
I just switched my page, sorry. A resolution for adoption of amendments to the zoning code to repeal local law number 1 of 2017 entitled Solar Energy Facilities and to enact local law number 13 of 2024 entitled Solar Energy Facilities Law with amendment to site plan fees.
Okay, is there any discussion?
Yeah, so at this point in time, again, yes, the Energy Committee, fantastic job, a lot of work. Is this solar law perfect? Not by any means, okay? No laws are ever perfect. A lot of effort was put into this. Could we expect that there's going to be 100% consensus on it? No. When I first looked at this, I had some reservations, again, relative to the 2.5. I brought those to Kim's attention. She was pretty passionate, beat on me a little bit. She didn't talk to me for a week or two. And we evolved through the process. There was continued updates on it. I brought questions to the board relative to blasting. Geez, and I'm in construction every day. We can blast anything. I blasted a storm drain next to a church. They had a very nice foundation. We had seismographs there. We're next to a barn with the cows and stuff, and they're all panicking like we're going to blow their facility up. The seismograph didn't move, okay? And we battled it out, I see it's still in here. That's fine, okay? There's many other things that are in here, and I know that we've had a discussion about, various members looking at it. I could nitpick this code to death, okay? Is that going to get us anywhere? No. I came into the meeting tonight, I could have easily said tonight that I'd like to see this postponed, but I don't know if the postponement's going to get us any further. I mean, we're down, maybe people in the trenches on certain aspects of it, But what we can't miss out on is the overall code and what we're trying to do here. We're never going to make everyone happy. And I, you know, again, I appreciate, I too received emails from, you know, other members, some town employees that brought up, I believe, very legitimate concerns relative to solar law. You know, and I'm not for, hey, geez, you know, let's pass this and go back through and correct those. You know, I spent probably a good part of an hour today, you know, going through, tearing into this, and asking myself, this for me, okay? Are these things that are no-goes for me, that, you know, are we gonna hold the solar code up at this point in time because of these no-goes? But I want everyone to realize, for the no-goes that I have, that, you know, say there was a dozen of them, or even a half dozen, there's multitudes of other positive aspects of what's in this code. You know, it's pretty clear to me, you know, from the very day that I read this code, that there was a lot of this code protecting the western part of our town. You know, and it's open space, it's beautiful. And I can see why there would be some entrenchment in my mind of, you know, protecting, you know, that part of our town. You know, we've had great presentations relative to the history of that area. And, you know, the bottom line is, you boil it all down. You know, as a community, we could have our different opinions, but at some point in time, we got to come together, that be it as a board or a community. And, you know, we got to kind of stand our ground on. There are two different parts of our town. A very developed part of our town, where we can see a lot more of this type of development and stuff. And then a very different part of our town that's very open space, that is very conducive to put solar there, but it changes the character and nature of what our community is about. And, you know, at some point in time, you got to draw the line in the sand. And, you know, at this point in time, I think we just need to put this to bed and move on to the next coach here. Thank you.
Any other discussion?
Yeah, listen, I would just say I didn't see any harm in keeping the public meeting open and addressing some of the concerns. You know, even tonight there was some disagreement of what the money was used for. Even this gentleman had a different idea of what he thought it was used for, and he's on the Energy Committee. So that's my only reason. I think that it does need to be voted on. I think it needs to be approved. I just think that I would have liked to have seen the meeting held open and address some of the concerns, regardless of whether you feel, you know, they're valid or they're not valid, or people didn't do their due diligence. I'm just trying to voice my opinion for people that have reached out to me that felt that there was more that needed to be discussed.
Go ahead.
I'll be voting no. I cannot see redoing the things, and I just find that it's way too restrictive. It just doesn't make any sense to me. I give the Energy Committee all the credit in the world for the hard work that they've put into it, but I find it to be too restrictive. It's just absolutely, in my mind, putting in rules and regulations that I don't think would hold up. But again, I'm 1 out of 5, and that's okay with me. But my vote will be no, and that's why I voted no on everything else. And I don't agree with it at all, and I can't see passing it when we have until October to come back with a better draft and just pass it tonight to be done with it. That just seems senseless, and then to have to come back in a month or 2 months or whatever and change it. And I understand what you said, that if one part is deemed illegal, then that part can come out and the rest can stay. And I don't see any point to it, but that's just my opinion.
I'd like to comment that with the passage of the CLCPA in 2019, the New York State Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, which created the Climate Council, New York State, that is seeking to ban gas stoves and cover upstate with solar panels. There's been a lot of incentives put in place for open land in upstate New York to be used for solar farms or wind farms. And there's a lot of money being funneled to facilitate those operations. And there's a lot of reasons that it doesn't make sense. And we may find ourselves in 10 years or 20 years where there are other technologies available. Nuclear is certainly something that needs to be considered. And what would we be left with here in New York? We'd be left with a lot of solar farms. In fact, the Monolith solar facilities, the one on Burdick Street, one in Rotterdam Junction, they have gone bankrupt, so they're not even producing electricity. And they just sit there with weeds growing all over them. And that's not the kind of future that we want to see. It is important that we preserve the beauty and the rural character and the property values of the properties in the western part of town. This code is restrictive, but it does not make solar projects impossible. We have in our community, we have major transmission lines that converge from Niagara Falls that take electricity and they run all the way down to New York City. So that puts Rotterdam right in the crosshairs of where solar projects would make sense. What this code does is it creates a strong defense around the goal, to use a sports analogy, so that if a project were to be proposed, that we would have strong local code to defend it. And if it does get challenged, then we will challenge it. But if we leave ourselves vulnerable, we leave ourselves vulnerable. So I think it is important that we adopt this code. It is possible to be amended in the future, but it is important that we don't keep moratorium in place forever, that we do have code that reflects the interest of our community, and that we defend the home rule provision of the state constitution, that it's our community that determines what gets zoned and put in town, and not the central government in Albany or Washington or who knows elsewhere. So
And I just want to comment, we are not passing this just to pass it. There were numerous people and stakeholders and so many hours. I know myself, I'm working at least 30 to 35 hours a week, absorbing all of this and many other initiatives, same as our energy committee and the other committees that are formed under this board. They don't get paid. These are volunteers who are working on the best interest of our residents. And I sit at a table with them time and time again, and I see them up late at night, and they're getting involved in everything, and they are making sure that they touch base with all of the knowledge experts and learn from them. And everybody had a seat at that table. And no matter if it was a fireman or if it's someone like Dave who has an expertise in wells, they actively searched for people that had an expertise that they could call on. So I commend you for all of the work that you did, and I stand behind you 150%. Thank you very much for all your time and effort. I appreciate it.
Okay, any other discussion? I will entertain a motion.
Make a motion.
Motion by Mr. Mastriani. Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Second by Mrs. Galucci. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlag?
No.
Mrs. Collins?
No.
2 no and 3 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 284 of the year 2024, the clerk will read.
To negotiate and execute an agreement with Jason Hodak for consulting and advanced engineering services.
Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Mastriani. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlag?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 285 of the year 2024, clerk will read.
Establishing the Town of Rotterdam as lead agency for the Town of Rotterdam Sanitary Sewer Pump Station Improvement Project.
Okay, there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second? I'll second. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlag?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution number 286 of the year 2024, the clerk will read.
To appoint Patrick Reedy to the position of skilled labor.
Any discussion? Do I have a motion? I'll make the motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Ron.
Seconded by Mr. Schlag. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlag?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 287 of the year 2024, the clerk will read.
To request for qualifications RFQ for consultative services for a systematic analysis of all real property.
Is there any discussion?
Brad, take a minute, just come up and,
Maybe people will see it on the video.
Yeah,
because
a little
nobody left
quick
there.
overview here.
I guess consultative.
Yeah, all we're looking to do, as I stated in my review or agenda request, the town's equalization rate is down to 72%. 5 years ago, we were at 100%. So it's, market conditions have changed the landscape of our values over the past few years. There's a lot of inequity out there. So a systemic review of real property, I think, is needed for everyone to be equal. It's not a revalve. Let's not even say that word. It's just a review of the properties and the values. And it would be done over a few years. So we're looking at 2026. And it's some of the work we would do in-house. We'd save a lot of money there. So it wouldn't be like the huge one we had back in 2006. There's not going to be,
Thank God.
people walking around town with clipboards and stuff like that. It's going to be more in-house. We'll send out some paperwork. If there's some things we need to look at, the town staff will go out and look at it. And then whatever company that we work with, will then take our information and come up with values for the 2026 roll, and hopefully get us up to 100%, and everybody will be paying what they should, fairly and equitably. So that's pretty much it.
Can you just, again, for the lay people, what is an equalization rate? You know, we talk about that term and throw it around.
It's a measure of market value against your assessed values. So right now, we're seeing a house maybe assessed at $200,000, and it's been assessed at that since 2007. Current conditions, that house is probably selling for close to $400,000. So if that house were to sell, the person that purchased it is now paying half the taxes that they should, comparable to their neighbors. So their neighbors are picking up their burden. And commercially, our apartments are based on 2007 rents, as it's been brought up. Rents right now are not $700 for a two-bedroom apartment. They're substantially higher than that. So there's some inequity there that I think needs to be addressed. So.
And right now, we're just going out for qualifications. This doesn't bind
Correct.
us to
This
anything.
doesn't do anything. This
Looking
is just.
to see what companies are out there and what their qualifications are.
Yep, correct.
Is this the same process that Albany followed?
Yes.
And it is. And so when they went through this process and then they did the reassessment, is it true, it's what I read, that it went up about 200%?
It's possible.
It's possible. And
Albany's a different market than we are. It is possible, but just because someone's assessment goes up doesn't mean necessarily their taxes will go up.
I just wanted on record, I am not okay with reassessment, and this will let us go out and talk to different companies about the entire process, but as a whole, I think our residents have so many expenses, and to know that we're going to go through a reassessment on top of any increase in what they're seeing with water, I just think it's devastating for our folks in our community.
So Brad, address that relative to, why not do the status quo? We just hang out here, we just kick the can down the road, wait for a couple other administrations to handle it. But at some point in time, you got to do it. And obviously the pain gets worse the further you go down the road.
The longer you go, you get sticker shock.
Okay.
I mean, everybody's.
And I think that was 2006.
It was for the 2007 roll, yeah.
Yeah, and it was insane. It made a lot of people mad, because again, I think that the board, so we did it 2006 or 7. When was the last one done before that?
I believe it was back in the 80s.
Yeah, so that's so let's compare it to other communities. I mean, I saw some statistics that you sent around, the cities Schenectady are doing pretty well. They're up there, but I see that they went down to like 69. They were up pretty high.
They were up into the 120s at one point. When we were at 100, they were a lot higher. That means they were over assessing properties, and they have come down.
Down quite a bit. Niskayunis. So I got them here. I'll take a look at it. Where do we stand? And the 2024 equalization rates and statuses. Schenectady is about 68. Waynesburg was 23. Glanville 61. Niskayuna was 75. Princetown was 23 roughly. Rotterdam 72. That dropped from 2023 when Rotterdam was 76, City of Schenectady was 79, and Glenville was 68, Niskayuna was 79. So again, these are continuing to come down over time. All these boards are going to have to make a decision at some point in time. Do we continue to kick the can down the road, hope for better times, and deal with it at that point in time, or do we start evaluating this now? And it's my understanding this is for 2026?
Correct.
Okay. So again, I always like the public to understand and get choices. Choices come down. If you don't do it, there's an impact to it. What is the impact of not, besides, hey, this transparency, we need to put everyone on an equal footing. There's other benefits to do this. Our bond rating for one.
Improved bond rating. And also, on the other hand, we're starting to see it now. It does affect veterans exemptions. Anybody, I kind of did a look. I really wasn't, it's probably not 100%, but roughly a house right now that's assessed at, say, $250,000. And that person has a combat vets exemption. In 2019, when we were 100%, their exemption was worth $60,000 off their assessed value. It is now worth $45,000 off their assessed value. So it is starting to affect other things.
And we just not too long ago did approve a resolution where we raised the exemption for low income, again, based on assessment. So what the general public doesn't always understand is that assessment number has a huge impact. The funding that we go after. We just did some applications. Not only did they ask us for our 2024 assessment, they asked for the last 5 years of assessment. They're making decisions on the town of Rotterdam relative to other communities and stuff is how financially stable are we? A lot of that comes back to assessed values and how we're managing our town finances, how we're managing our assessments of our properties. There's a way more to this than, hey, geez, I got to worry about my property is going to get reassessed and I'm going to pay more taxes. It's a lot more than that, because when you don't go through and do it, then we bear the burden of all the disadvantages of not trying to be, and I don't even want to say current, we're talking 2007 to 2024, there are a lot of things that have happened. This goes to 2026, you're talking 20 years. Think of the things that have changed in Rotterdam or the country in 20 years. So we can choose, again, it's very easy to do up here on the desk, put our head under the carpet and just say, hey, I don't want any part of this. I'm not so certain we're doing our job when we do that. Our job is to educate our public, get them to understand what the ramifications are and why we're even entertaining this at this point in time. And I'm certain, again, there would be many, you know, Terry's probably very correct. You know, you go out there and say, hey, this is a reval, red flags go up, okay? We'll pack this place, okay? But that doesn't mean we as a board should not do what we are elected to do, which protect the long-term interests of the town of Rotterdam. And then that, in my mind, is the bottom line. That's my say.
All right.
Brad, did you mention that 5 years ago the equalization rate was 100%?
Yes.
So in 5 years, we've gone from 100% down to
We went
72%.
100 to 98 to 95, and then the big drop to 83 to 76, and now we're at 72. And the reason we're at 72 is because we do have a little play with the numbers that the state gives us. They came out with 69, but I was able to kind of
72.
bump it up a little bit, but I think next year we're going to be down in the 60s.
So Brad, the other thing I guess I would like to bring up on this is we as a board in the last couple of years, not necessarily the new members on the board, we received awesome news several times from the county relative to our mortgage tax that came into the town of Rotterdam. You know, our town of Rotterdam, we were like, woo! Everyone wanted to move into the town of Rotterdam, was buying properties in the town of Rotterdam, of which was advantageous to the town of Rotterdam, okay? Well, what does that come down to? People want to live here. When people want to live here, that drives up the cost of living here, okay? Drives up property values and stuff that we all took advantage of, okay? So, as in anything in life, you always like to take advantage of the things that are in your favor. But when someone says, now it's your turn, you've benefited from it, now, geez, we're looking at a reassessment, everyone's like, oh, we don't want any part of that. You know, it's all part of the process. You know, you don't get one without the other. And that's the bottom line. That's what this comes down to.
So, Brad, I really do appreciate your expertise, and I know you come to us with an awful lot, and anybody that does their homework, I appreciate. Is there another way that we can do this without costing our taxpayers more money? Could it be that we can attract more business, and through that, like what have you seen? What's our other option?
Change the market. And the market drives the rate. Bringing in more business, that's just gonna, I don't know what impact that would even have. Yeah, you might add a little more to the tax base, to your taxable value. But when right now our taxable value in the town is over $2 billion, you add a couple million to it, it's a drop in the water. To make sure, and that's the one thing that's my job, is to have everyone fair and equitable. And right now we're not. So my recommendation to the town is that we should do one. If you do one or not, it doesn't matter to me. I will still have to do my job. Life still goes on. But
So we talked a little bit about apartments and how maybe that is not was not assessed appropriately. Where did we go wrong with that?
there's no way you went wrong. They were valued properly in 2007. You can't just go and increase them over the years. That would be selective assessment, and that's illegal. The only way to do it is to do a larger project. You can even just do commercials if you chose, or you can do residentials. But in the interest of fairness and the cheapest way to the taxpayer is to do everything at once. That way there's no question. Everybody you have everyone would be at 100%, whether they're a commercial property or a residential property or a vacant land. That's one of the other items is our vacant land tables are going on 20 years old. An acre of land isn't, back then, you get an acre of land for a couple grand, and now it's probably about 40 grand for an acre. So
So let's talk bigger picture, let's talk budget, we're gonna start working on budget soon. We do calculations, okay, on our tax rate, okay, based on what our assessed value is, okay? So, we had a conversation earlier, oh geez, it goes up 200%. In the end, the town of Rotterdam has a budget, okay? We're gonna start working on it soon. There's a certain amount of money that we need in a budget, okay? That's a fixed number. So it's not as though we go do a reassessment, the town picks up, millions and millions of dollars more, okay, relative to the budget. The budget's still gonna be some percentage increase from last year's. And, when we run our calculations relative to the dollar per thousand assessed value, okay, it's gonna equate back to whatever our budget is again. So I just don't want the misconception out there. It's just because you go through and do, this review, doesn't mean that the town is taking in all this additional revenue because we're jacking everyone's assessment up, higher so we can spend your money. It comes back to, we're trying to make it equitable. There's fairness between your neighbors or your equivalent property, okay? In the end, that comes back down to, a dollar per thousand tax rate, either homestead or non-homestead rate. Okay, that's the bottom line, again.
Correct. It's not, town is not doing this to get more money. It's just making sure everything's equitable. And that's
based on a fair market value of property that people are buying out there from 2006 now to 2024. So my only other thing that I would say is, how many of us go on Zillow, look at our property, and I can tell you right now, as a tax-paying property owner in the town of Rotterdam, that if I looked at my assessment in 2006 and I looked at it in 2024 and that assessment was flat or went down, I wouldn't be living in the town of Rotterdam, okay? Because we all have an expectation that our property, if it's well maintained, is going to appreciate over time. And I just think that's an expectation of a property owner. So to think that, geez, we don't want to see an increase in the taxable assessed value in our town is going backwards. We are a town that people want to live in. We have an expectation, again, that if we buy real property in our town, that it's going to appreciate over time, okay, and not go backwards. Which gets into all these other conversations that we had tonight relative to the solar law, or talking about a 3-story building versus a 2 in our town. All these things come into play, again, in my mind, to make sure that Rotterdam is a nice place to live. And, it requires due diligence every day to keep us up there so that our community is desirable. That's the bottom line.
Brad, you said this is not a reval. This is just a request for qualifications to find out the cost, and then you said that this is not like the 2006 reval.
Correct.
It will be you're saying that this is an RFQ, request for qualifications, for collecting information. Is that help me understand exactly?
This is to ask for a potential partner to come in and help with a systemic review. We will not be doing it by state guidelines, where we have to take all their steps. We won't be sending that letter out that says your taxes are going to be this, and then a year later their taxes aren't even close to what that letter said. We won't get any state aid for this because we won't be going by their guidelines.
Why is that?
Mainly because they require a lot more. They would require us to go out into the field and examine every property.
So that's what you mean. If we went by state guidelines, it would be considered we throw out the term reval.
It would be a reassessment project.
A reassessment project.
Yes.
So this wouldn't be a reassessment project then.
This is more a review of the information to arrive at a equitable role.
But essentially, every single property, residential and commercial, will be reassessed.
Yes.
Okay.
That would be the aim, yeah.
If the process starts today, then it would be 2026 that
Correct.
every, people's January 2026 taxes would be.
That would be the 2026 roll, so that would affect the school September of 26 and January of 27.
Okay, thank you. And what would be the total cost for
It could range anywhere from $30 to $60.
No, the total cost for the town to, I mean, obviously, we're going out for bid right now, but.
We're not going out for bid, we're going out for qualifications.
Right, but roughly, this would be $500,000, $750,000, $1 million for the town to, somewhere in that
Got a
range.
calculator?
Yeah, but somewhere in
So we
that
got
range.
13,000 parcels.
Okay. So yeah, it's a lot of.
30 times 30.
What's the $30?
That would be
Per
the
parcel.
parcel, be $30 per parcel.
Okay, that would be the cost for.
So 390?
Okay.
Yeah, so it'd be anywhere, I think, between 400 and $1 million, depending on the company and what they offer.
Okay. We talk about sticker shocks, if the municipality waits too long, then, like you had mentioned, Long Island hasn't done a reassessment in 100 years.
And then that, they have done, a couple of the municipalities. They have started.
Just a couple on the
Yeah,
island,
they have
most
started
have
to do
not.
it, but, yeah.
And you mentioned also too, Princeton and Waynesburg had equalization rates in the 20s.
Correct. Yeah. Your rural communities, it's tough for them to do that. Money-wise,
It's all relative too.
Yeah.
I mean, you're picking a number out of thin air really when the market is the actual determinant of what something is worth at any given time.
And you said our what are we, 2 billion, what'd you say the number is?
we're over 2 billion.
2 billion, so a rural municipality would be way with factors, 10 factors less than that.
Correct.
Becomes a lot less of an issue.
Yeah.
Becomes a big issue in a community with the highest $2 billion assessment.
Your rural value, your rural communities, your more large properties, large farms, large vacant lots, solar farms. So that they don't have the tax base to even make it worth their while to do one in most cases. But with a town of our size and the amount of residential, we're about 85% residential. It's in our best interest, I feel.
So I have a question that, are there ways, I think I may have asked this in the past, but if you could just repeat to the public, are there ways to kind of, if there is a big sticker shock, municipality that's at a 50% equalization rate, is there ways to kind of put it in through stages, 2 years, 5 years?
Yeah, I believe there
do
is,
that?
the term escapes me, but there is that, you can do the steps, it's like a 5-year. The problem with that is the market can change in those 5 years. Someone that gets assessed in year 1 to year 5, it could be completely different. And you saw that in when we went from 95 down to 83 is 1 year.
Yeah.
That was a 12-point drop.
What year was that?
And then we do
Well, in the last, so we've seen a lot of.
2001 to 2, yeah, then we went from 83 to 76,
Yeah.
and 76, so yeah.
Right in the height of COVID.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of, I mean, just in the last 5 years, huge trends. I mean, do you, in your best expertise, have any prediction of what the housing market could do in the next 5 years? I mean, do you expect, I don't think anybody can really predict. Are interest rates going to go up? Interest rates going to go down? Are we going to experience massive hyperinflation?
I'm seeing it level out.
Yeah.
The $100,000 assessed house, the little houses were going for $250,000. And then there was some huge jumps. You'd get a $400,000 sale for a $100,000 house, and it'd be like, what are these people thinking? But I am seeing it start to level out. That's why I think we're going to end up in the 60s when it's all said and done, if nothing is done. Will we drop down to 50 to 40? I don't think so. All indications are, from what I'm seeing, is yeah, that the market is starting to level. Even if interest rates do go down, I don't think it's going to jack up prices any higher. Right now, what is driving it is just the inventory. Just people aren't really selling, and when they do, I mean, you have 5 years ago, you'd have an estate sale. Parents both pass away, and the kids they don't want the house, so they throw it on the market. They got $100,000 for it. Now I'm seeing estate sales that they're on the market for 3 days, and they're going for twice than what they are assessed at. And unfortunately, we can't use that sale. It's still not a valid sale, but it just shows that when something comes on, people are going to snatch them up. You don't see a lot of flippers right now because they can't snatch up the house is cheap and then flip them and make a big profit. Those have lessened a lot over the last few years.
But ideally, it makes sense to do a reassessment when things are kind of stable, where you kind of feel it being stable for 5-10 years. I mean, you know, things change.
Ideally, you do an assessment every few years to keep up with the market. New York City does one every year because they have to. The state would like us on a 6-year plan. I don't know of anybody that's on a 6-year plan. It's tough to do that, but again, if you go back to 2007, you go right before that, the market was huge. Everybody was buying. They were buying their houses. They were buying the boats. They were buying the cars for their kids. And then everybody did a revalve. And the day later, the market dropped. You don't know. That being said, I don't think you're ever going to see a situation like that. I think things are going to start to level out, and values are going to stay, at least sales, market-wise, things are going to start to even out where they are. Where your house that's assessed at $200 is going to sell for $350, something like that. And that's going to be, I think, even across the board.
Anyone else? Okay.
Good, thank you.
You're welcome.
I think that was our discussion. Do I have a motion? I'll make the motion.
And I'll second.
Second by Mr. Dodson. On the question. Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes, I'm going to say yes, and again, with the understanding this is a request for qualifications. We're trying to partner with a firm that would allow us to move forward with this initiative.
Mr. Mastriani?
I understand this is an issue and that it's important we have not only a good understanding of what's going on, we have a discourse like this publicly and in the broader public to educate people to understand, you know, the implications here. And, you know, I do recognize that it is imprudent to kick the can down the road. I feel it's more imprudent to kick the can down the road on improving our infrastructure, which only costs us more in the long run. We have to bite the bullet there. This, however, you know, what you're assessed at, what you get your house for, it really, it's not an exact science. It's, you know, it's relative. And it's not as imperative as, say, fixing our water main lines or you know, our highway garage or our police station and court. It's a lot of money to spend, and you know, we have a tight budget, and there's a lot of things we could spend money on in our parks, infrastructure, obviously. I fear that this going forward is going to create a sensation in the community that people are going to, in an environment that we're in, where the cost of groceries are going up, where gas is going up, people are going to feel like their property taxes are going to go up without having the nuanced understanding that we're trying to build tonight. And it's going to create fear and panic among the community. I do recognize that, at some point, reassessment could take place. Otherwise, we go down the path that Long Island is on. But because the environment that we're in, economically, with inflation, I'm going to vote no.
Mrs. Galucci?
No.
Mr. Schlag?
Yes.
Mrs. Collins?
Yes,
3 yes, 2 no.
motion passes. Resolution number 288 of the year 2024, the clerk will read.
Requesting bids for fire hydrants, flags, valves, and valve boxes.
Okay, is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I will make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson, and if you'll allow me, I will second. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlag?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Motion passes. That concludes our resolutions for this evening. And now move on to liaison reports. Does anybody have anything under liaisons? Okay. Does any board members have anything they wish to say under miscellaneous?
I do.
Yeah. Fire away.
So again, I always appreciate people who come here and speak. I just wish that people would stay for the whole meeting and listen to all of our comments. And it's frustrating that people come in and throw a grenade, and then when their part's done, they're out of here. And that's frustrating to me. I asked this question before, I don't understand with the community center how this zoning change keeps them from doing what they've been doing. They've been operating without this funding. Now, funding is going to help, and you could help more people. Hey, I get that. But we're not telling them they can't make the improvements to this property. They just can't do a second story. So if you wanted to do third, sorry. Okay, listen, it gets long at 9:30. But again, you do a second story, you do 30 units, and you improve your facility or your property, or you go out, or you go down. I don't know what else to say. I think that they're trying to get the toothpaste back in the tube. And, where do you stop in Rotterdam? What do you want, 6-story building, 7-story, 8 building? I don't know where you stop. You gotta limit it somewhere. And that's my issue. I think there was money that was put up there, and I think it looked enticing. And again, this is not stopping them from doing what they've been doing, or even 6 months ago what they were doing. That's where I'm at.
I'd like to speak on that too. The other issue that never seems to come up is when they went before the planning board, or when they met with us, our senior planner told them that they did not have adequate parking, even close to what they needed for as many as apartments as they were going to have. And, they wanted to use public land for a private purpose. And that leads us down a whole nother path that I don't think is a good path to be on. I don't even sure if it's legal. But that never seems to be brought up. And the overwhelming feeling is that we don't want them to have a food pantry or a green grocer, and that's just not true. As I stated at the beginning, when I met with Reverend Longmire on the 2nd, I wanted to know not every financial that they had, but what were they looking for? How much money would it cost for them to do the repairs to the building, to get a full-time administrator of the program? What were their needs? Because then maybe we can go down another avenue, and I don't mean from the town, but I can name companies, but I don't want to name them, but we know that there are companies that have built wings on hospitals. Maybe they'd be willing to. If they had a large enough endowment, even if it came from several places, would they be able to live off the interest? I'm willing to explore other ways, and I just don't think it's that we don't want them to do what they're doing. And as far as the housing goes, like I said, I can have anywhere between 20 and 40 vouchers a month coming in from HUD that those families are receiving assistance for either rent and or utilities. So it's not like Rotterdam has said, oh, we don't want anybody that doesn't earn X amount of dollars a year. That's just not true. So I don't know. I would like to help them any way I can, but they have to abide by the code.
I just want to add to that as well. I know that a lot has been made with the zoning code, but we have also mentioned several times here tonight about another potential option that they may want to consider, which would be a variance. That is a possibility in this case that they also have the option of exploring. And if they can bring that option to the Zoning Board of Appeals and provide a convincing argument, which they are very capable of doing, then that is another way of moving forward. So there are other options. It is not an impossibility, but it requires some work. So,
Thank you. It's just frustrating that members of their community in particular think that the town board is responsible for the viability of the food pantry. And there's two things going on there. There's a food pantry, and then there's the option to sell that property to a developer to develop a 3-story, 60-unit affordable housing building, mixed-use building. And the conflation that this board is preventing the food pantry from being able to provide food to people, it doesn't make sense. There's a lot of passionate pleas being made, and my concern is for the people that don't really understand the nuance of it, that are thinking that this board is preventing a food pantry from existing. That's not the case at all. I hope that the food pantry continues to flourish, and I hope, more importantly, that the people that are in need of food from a food pantry flourish. It's not our objective to prevent what they're doing, and it's unfortunate that the storylines kind of get twisted around to think that this board is holding up what the community center is doing.
Anyone else under miscellaneous? Oh, then I will take a
Motion to adjourn. I'd like to make that motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Mastriani. All in favor?